seductive, manipulative.
He's also a former social worker and a political campaign activist.
Some people in town say the base is run by aliens working with our federal government to conduct mind control and genetic experiments.
I'm leaving. I'm glad. Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass.
What's up, Podcast Nation? This is the Eerie Americas. I'm your host, Kristi Hull.
This is Vicky Ayala.
How we doing today?
We're all energetic. I went on a crazy detox, and it actually, not a crazy detox, not one of those like tummy tea, I'm gonna shed 10 pounds in 1 week thing, just the revamping my diet because I have an autoimmune disease and I finally figured out I need to stop eating whatever I want. Mm-hmm. And the detox is working because even Kristi said that I have a lot more energy today. Normally I come here and I'm half dead.
I feel like we're usually on the same level in terms of like me being exhausted and I'm like, oh gosh, okay, I need a drink. I need to calm down. And she's just like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, wow, I'm trying to keep up. Like, I'm pretty proud of you. I have crazy allergies, as I'm sure I've mentioned before. And I'm suffering this week. It's been really, really bad. So I've been on the total opposite end. I'm completely lethargic. I'm like, ugh. But I'm sure the rest of the world's feeling the same way with spring coming around. But it's so funny because I'm like so proud of you because I know there's a lot of things I shouldn't eat and I still eat it anyway. And that's the hardest part. So kudos for you on that because that is my kryptonite. I'm just like, I know I shouldn't have cheese, but how am I not going to have the occasional slice of pizza? I know I shouldn't have that, but I'm going to have it anyway. I know I shouldn't have that drink or that extra drink or that third drink, but I'm gonna. So I have to realize that I'm old now and I have to let those go. That's the hard part.
Yeah, but what I want to say about it is that it's extremely hard and it's only the first week and I don't know how long this is going to... It's a lot. Like I had to cut out basically everything I love. And as a Latina, you know, it's hard to cut out rice. It's hard to cut out potatoes. Mm-hmm. I have to stop eating meat. I have to cut out dairy. I have to cut out gluten from my diet, sugars. I'm supposed to be cutting out alcohol, but I'm having a drink now, but that's the first drink I'm having and probably the only one.
I make my own kombucha and I mix tequila with kombucha. So
really it's healthy.
It's a healthy bad thing. It's kind of negating. What's a negative plus a positive?
A negative.
Okay, but still you got a positive mixed in. So you got some... I
mean, if I'm going to feel a little crappy tomorrow, at least it's something I chose to do. But I definitely do feel better. I did have like one day I had really bad inflammation, but I really feel like that was getting all the toxins out of my body. I have a big, fat, huge pimple on my cheek. But again, I think that's because I'm detoxifying and everything's coming out. But in general, in terms of energy, I do feel better. I do feel less inflamed. Autoimmune diseases suck. I wish there was more research for lupus and other autoimmune diseases. But, you know, that's a whole different story. But yeah, that's us this week. But you also like have crazy work and I would probably be pissed and lethargic if I had your job that wanted to give me meetings at 4:00 on a fucking Friday. Yeah,
I told Vicky, I'm like, hey, I'm not going to be leaving early because I usually try to get to work early to leave early. I have flex hours that way. But of course, there was a 4:00 meeting scheduled that I completely forgot about. And I even tried to email the group and was like, hey, I know so-and-so's not around today. Like, we can totally reschedule. And she emailed back like, no, I just got in. It's fine. And I'm just like, no, why? So I text Vicky and I'm like, hey, I'm going to be like later than usual. So we're going to have to record a little later. And she's like, it should be against the law to have a meeting at 4:00 on a Friday. And I agree with that.
I'm also firmly against Monday morning meetings. There's just certain things you shouldn't do. And Monday morning and Friday evening are just not the times for meetings. Any other day of the week, any other time, schedule your meetings away. Please do not make me spend the last hour of the week at work at a meeting. It's cruel and it's not fair.
It is. It's cruel and an unusual punishment, but that's life, right? What would it be without the trials, tribulations, and jobs sucking the soul out of you?
Yeah, I actually woke up to like a adulting sucks moment because I filed my taxes in February and I just got them in May. And I was so excited because I woke up and I'm like, ooh, extra money, and immediately paid off all of my credit cards. And then I had no money. Mm-hmm. And that tax money went in literally 5 minutes. That by the time I texted you at 9:30, I was like, hey, I got my tax return. 5 minutes later, it's all gone.
That's adult life, kids. Don't let them fool you. That's really what it is.
If there's any like teenagers or kids listening to this podcast and all you're thinking is, I can't wait to be an adult, you can wait to be an adult.
Trust me, wait.
I promise you.
Wait.
Don't be so anxious to grow up.
Wait.
Be super excited to be a kid where your only responsibility is going to school and then
wait
going
until
home.
your parents kick you out. Wait. Just wait until
But if you're
can't.
Latino, that's like when you're 18.
Yeah, of course. You have like the day after your 18th birthday. But if you're one of those cool parents that don't care if your kids hang out, stay at your parents' house for as long as until it feels awkward for you. Also, to include this week, we have a new recommendation. I know it's really, really popular right now, so we're going to hop on the bandwagon. But I told Vicky about the show, and I was in the middle of watching it, and I was like, I'm not even going to wait to finish it to tell her to start watching. That's how into it I was. Chambers on Netflix.
Oh,
it is
my God.
It's hyped up for a reason, guys. Not only is it an amazing Native American story, which I think I've mentioned, I love Native American culture and history. So
it's not just like random people playing a Native American. No, it's Native Americans playing Native Americans. It's amazing to see them in lead roles. But also, this show, the first thing Kristi says, she's like, dude, watch this show. You have no idea where it's going. And I'm like, people tell me that. I always figure it out. I had no fucking clue where the show was going. You get like all these different things. You really, I'm telling you, are going to have no idea until the end. And then you're going to look back and be like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
But not in a bad way.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Twin Peaks, like in the fact that you don't know what's happening every single episode, and every time you think you figured it out, they throw something else in the mix.
And it doesn't feel boring. It doesn't feel dragged on. It doesn't feel monotonous. It's like all of the actors are amazing.
And there are some parts that are genuinely scary. For those of you guys, I mean, we're obviously if you're jumpy, I would recommend like watching with the lights on.
The people who did this were genius because they purposely, the lighting in it, it's super like dark. They use dark colors and you kind of feel like you're in the room with them. And so if you scare easily, or if you're watching this late at night, maybe watch with the lights on. But I promise you won't regret it. It is amazing. The actors are amazing.
My girl Uma Thurman is in it. She's
Tony Goldwyn too. Amazing.
Uma's been one of my girls forever. She's one of the best villains ever from the Batman series. So I've had respect for her since the 90s. I don't care. It's shouting out my age. I don't care. Uma's the woman. She's amazing in this. She's awesome. She's so
really great. And it's just so well written too. Like I've been watching a lot of shit where the writing is pretty bad and you like want to like it. The writing here is terrific.
A lot of it is very atmosphere heavy. It's about the environment. It's about the look of the cinematography, which is really my style. If you're into that whole like kind of artsy feel to it, not too much talking, but you understand the language in between the actors and the environment, it is right up your alley.
Some of the most important things happen when they're not talking. Don't make this one of the shows that you watch in between your text messages. Put your phone down. Pay attention, because what's happening when they're not doing something is just as important as what's happening when they're talking.
And I promise you won't regret it. So watch Chambers. It's awesome. We love it. But I'm going to go into an email now because we have a really interesting one. We got an email from our account from a young woman named Melissa, and it's a pretty crazy story. So I'm going to read it to you right now. Nobody believes me when I tell this story, but it's one of my only memories from childhood and one that kind of still scares me when I think about it. I was probably 8 or 9 years old in a very secluded part of northern Maine, about 30 minutes from Quebec. We were staying at my uncle's cabin during the summer months. His property mostly consisted of woods miles behind his house. Although it was secluded, he did have several neighbors within a couple miles radius. His cabin was right on the edge of a remote part of State Route 27, a long road buried in the woods of a mountain valley often used to travel to Canada. Across the street from his cabin was a lake with the Bigelow Mountain Range. Several 18-wheeler lodging trucks and locals would travel the road very lightly during the day. Overnight, there would probably be 2 or 3 18-wheelers, but other than that, dead silence. The road had one dim streetlight, so it was incredibly dark. It was probably 3 to 4 a.m., and I was with my cousin, Leanne, who was around 8 or 9, and my brother Michael, who was 7 or 8. We were asleep in the living room within view of the front door. My uncle was asleep in his bedroom, which was in the back of the house, and my mom was in the guest room, also in the back of the house. I remembered feeling incredibly uncomfortable and woke up. I had noticed that both Leanne and Michael were also awake. We saw a large human-like emancipated figure standing outside of the front door, with only its torso in view. It was right at the window. My uncle's front door has a high view window, and it was approximately 36 by 81, so it was fairly large. It was standing about 11 to 13 feet tall, if I had to guess. Then it completely crouched down and looked through the front door. I had slight visibility of the shadow its gangly shoulder arm made an outline of its face, but no facial features were visible. I just remember it being very tall and very thin and lanky, almost like it was wasting away, based off how it appeared to be crouching down, almost in a way like humans would crouch down to pet a small dog. I knew it had to be humongous. We all started to scream, which caused the figure to do some weird twitching and jerking motion with its neck and head still crouched over looking in. The maneuvers would have been anatomically impossible for a human to do. At this point, possibly due to our screaming, the figure takes off around the back of the house. Its footsteps sounded and felt like booming thumps. Each one subtly shook the entire house. We heard it run, almost like a labor dragging run, for probably another 30 seconds. It and the sound disappeared into the darkness of woods behind my uncle's house. At this point, our screaming woke up my uncle and mom, who were running out of their rooms. We told them what happened, but they denied hearing or seeing anything. My uncle went outside to see if there was anything there and came back and confirmed that whatever we saw was gone. The woods continued for miles and miles, but for something so large, it disappeared so quickly. We never saw it again. I'm 26 now, my cousin Leanne is now 27, and my brother is 25. We all remember the story the exact same way. My mom and uncle remember us screaming and always note how, quote, petrified we looked, but didn't hear or see anything. I wish I could find out what it was that I saw that night, because it didn't seem mean, just curious and scared.
That's insanely creepy.
It almost sounds like a humanoid.
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
Yeah, if you go to like cryptozoology news and
Yeah.
stuff like that, you can kind of find people that had similar stories. So if that helps you at all, Melissa, that's like a place to kind of check out. There's been sightings like this, and it's always strangely in wooded areas. So
Right.
I find that pretty fascinating, especially considering, like I tell the podcast, since it'll be coming up soon, I'm going to be exiting New York City. So
Sad.
we're still going to do the podcast. We're going to, you guys won't notice the difference.
I'm actually not sad. I'm very happy. I feel like this is such a good move for Kristi and her husband. And it gives me a reason to go visit.
Yeah.
But it's going to be sad not actually, like, seeing you every
I know,
Friday. I'm used to it.
It'll be an adjustment. But, I mean, I'm just nervous because I'm moving to Colorado, and it's a mountain range. We don't have as many woods, but it's still way more outdoors than Brooklyn, New York City.
It would be so cool if you saw something.
So who knows? And Colorado's really famous for their alien
there's a lot
sightings
of,
and stuff. So
and their weird air.
Yeah, it'll be an eerie. I'm hoping to have an eerie experience myself. That would be pretty cool. So we'll see. But yeah, thank you, Melissa. That was an amazing
That was
story.
that was great.
That was great.
Not for you because it actually happened, but that was great to read about it.
Yeah, that was really creepy. And we totally believe you, by the way.
Absolutely. Most of the time when somebody tells me a story, especially when more than one person witnesses it, I believe you.
So Vicky's got a really crazy story for us today.
I do. I haven't done a murder in a while, and
classic murders never go wrong.
I'm gonna go into a creepy, unsolved, weird, freaking murder. This is the murder in room 1046.
The ones that are always scary are the ones with the numbers.
Yes.
I don't know what it is with the numbers. It's
numbers are weird. Hotels are weird.
Yeah.
Things are weird. I don't know. I didn't find this case on purpose, and it really totally creeped me out. Because, at this point, we've done so much research on cases that every once in a while does come like this super creepy case, and then you just have to get into it. But this case is so crazy. It's just a bunch of intertwined mysteries and theories and weird cryptic pieces of evidence. It's hard to even know where to start. I wrote this up 7 times because I just kept finding more and more stuff. And basically it's a case of a mysterious man who checked himself into a hotel, never checked out, left behind a bunch of mysteries, shadowy people, crazy details, weird clues, murky circumstances, and it continues to this day to baffle police. On January 2nd, 1935, at 1:20 p.m., a lone, well-dressed man wearing a black overcoat checked into the Hotel President in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. He immediately stood out, not only because of his height and build, a distinguishable glaring facial scar, and cauliflower ears, which I looked it up. It's basically swelling of the ears due to a blood clot. It causes the tissues to get damaged and they look a little bit lumpy. They also call it boxer's ear. So he's tall, he's skinny, he's got a big facial scar, the cauliflower ears. He also had no luggage. He asked for an interior room not facing the street outside on a high floor just for one night. Paid his room up front in cash and checked in under the name of Ronald T. Owen with an address from Los Angeles, California. He started complaining to the bellboy, Randolph Prost, about the outrageous prices of the hotel next door. Randolph guided him to his room, where Ronald T. Owen produced personal items from his pocket. He took out a comb, a toothbrush, toothpaste, and a hairbrush. Puts the items on the counter, takes the key from Randolph, and Randolph goes on his way. He also ended up just leaving the hotel right after that, just puts his stuff down and leaves.
Okay.
So the hotel, they saw this as odd, but they didn't really think much of it because I'm sure they see their fair share of shit.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently this hotel was known for having, sketchy out-of-towners, businessmen, women of the night, things like that.
It's an affordable hotel.
It's an affordable hotel.
That's what you expect even now.
And they figured the less they get involved, the better. And so they basically didn't think about him for until a couple of days later. So later on that same day that he checked into the hotel, the maid named Mary Soptic stopped by to clean his room. When she reached his room, she found that the door was locked, and the door's locked from the outside. So it means somebody had to leave and then lock the door behind them. So she knocks, and he actually was there, and he opened the door. She insisted she can come back later, because, normally if you're in the room, they don't clean around you. But he told her that she can come in. When she gets in there, she said he looked noticeably distraught, super anxious, and he was just in this room, completely dim. All the shades were drawn, and all he had was a little bit of a faint light coming from one small lamp. Once he saw her, though, he composed himself and basically got ready to leave the room and told her that he was expecting someone to come over later and to leave the door open. He was really, really specific about her leaving the door open, mentioned it several times before he left. She agreed. He leaves the room. Later on that day, she actually goes back to the room with fresh towels. She found that the door was still unlocked from when she left it unlocked. So she figured nobody's there, or they didn't come back, so she enters. Once she goes in, again, she finds him in the room, laying fully clothed on top of his bed that was still made, staring at the ceiling like he was in deep thought and trying to read something that wasn't there. And on his table there was a note, and it said, "Don, I will be back in 15 minutes. Wait." She was somehow kind of startled to find him there, so she just decided, I'm coming back tomorrow morning.
Right. I would have done the same thing,
Yeah,
honestly.
she left that shit. No. So the next morning, this is January 3rd, her interactions in this room continue. Around 10:30 a.m., she stopped by to make the beds, found his door now to be locked from the outside, as it would be if someone left the room, so she's assuming he's not in there. So she opens the door with her master key. To her surprise, again, he was sitting there in the dark, in a chair in the corner of the room, again with the shades drawn and with that same one lamp on. She continued to clean, and as she cleaned, the phone rang and Owen picked it up. So she thought that he kind of looked shifty and he looked uncomfortable, but he still told her to continue cleaning. And so she's cleaning, and she overhears part of this conversation. The conversation goes, "No, Don, I don't want to eat. I'm not hungry. I just had breakfast." After a moment, he repeated, "No, I am not hungry." She just continued to clean, and she takes all the dirty towels. After he hung up, he began interrogating Mary about her job and the hotel. And this was the first time he had ever really spoken to her. He asked her about how many rooms she was in charge of, what kind of people, lived there, if any. He kept complaining about the prices of the hotel next door. And it was only after she left that she realized that since the door had been locked from the outside, that means someone else had been in the room and then left and knocked the door from outside.
Right.
So later on in the day, she returned with fresh towels because she had taken all the dirty ones earlier in the morning. This time she knocked, and she heard two voices in the room. When she announced that she just was coming there with fresh towels, a loud, deep voice told her to leave, claiming they had enough towels. This is strange because she knew that she had removed all the towels that morning, but she figured this is a really sensitive and private conversation, so she didn't want to intrude, and she left.
So it definitely wasn't Owen's voice.
No, it was somebody else's who told her to leave.
Okay.
Now, that same afternoon, there would be two more guests that checked into the hotel that kind of later become important. There was one guest by a woman by the name of Jean Owen, no relation to this guy, who had come to Kansas City to meet her boyfriend for the day and decided rather than drive back home, she would just stay in the hotel for a night. She checked into the hotel and she was given room 1048, which is right next door to Owen. Mm-hmm. In the early hours of January 4th, around 1 a.m., there was a disturbance coming from Owen's room. She would later describe it as what sounded like a man and a woman arguing, or perhaps more than two people. She also kind of heard a scuffle, a gasping noise, but she thought it could have been someone snoring, so she kind of thought about maybe calling the police, but then decided against it. Later on, she would state, "I heard a lot of noise which sounded like it was on the same floor and consisted largely of men and women talking loudly and cursing. When the noise continued, I was about to call the desk clerk but decided not to." That night, another night elevator operator named Charles also reported after hours activity, so he also heard all of the noise and all the bickering. The other hotel guest wasn't really a guest. It was what they call a commercial woman, basically a woman of the night that just goes there for a purpose.
Gotcha.
She frequented that hotel a lot, and she also had a couple of male patrons that were frequent at the hotel. She came there, she was searching for him, didn't find him, kind of looked around a couple of floors, didn't find the guy she was looking for, and then leaves. But again, she has to pass this room. So around 7 a.m. on the morning of January 5th, the operator, because back then, for you youngins, there were telephone operators. If you had to make a call, you had to call the operator. And she noticed that the phone in the room had been off the hook. So she asked the bellboy to go and figure out what's going on. So the bellboy got to have a really odd experience, but he goes and tries to figure out why the phone's off the hook, tell him to put the phone back on the hook. A voice from inside the room told him to come in and turn on the lights, but the door was locked. So the bellboy is like, the door's locked. So he's getting frustrated. He's knocking on the door. Nobody's answering. He knocked for several minutes. Still, nobody's answering. So he got frustrated and shouts to the door, put the phone back on the hook, and walks away. The person in the room, which we don't know if it's Owen, we don't know if it's another person, we don't know if it's two people, obviously didn't care because the phone stays off the hook. So about an hour and a half later, around 8:30, the phone is still off the hook. So they tell another bellboy now, please go upstairs and figure out what's going on. They need to put the phone back on the hook. So he knocks on the door, again, gets told to come in, and again, the door is still locked. So he does the same thing, knocks, nobody answers. He also yells, please hang up the phone. He thinks maybe Owen's drunk and just needs to be yelled at. So, hey, guy, hang up the phone. An hour and a half later, the telephone operator calls again and says the phone is still off the hook. He didn't put the phone back. So now this time, Harold is like, fuck this, I'm going in there. He takes his master key, goes into the room. Owen is lying naked on the bed. He thinks he looks drunk, so he's just like, whatever. He places the phone back on the hook, locks the door, and reports Owen to the manager. To his surprise, an hour later, the telephone operator called and said the phone's off the hook again, and nobody's using it. So Harold goes up again, but this time, there's a do not disturb sign hanging on the door. Harold knocks, no response. Again, thinks he's drunk, so he's like, I'm gonna go in with my master key. Now finds Owen hunched over the floor, holding his head in his hands and framed by splotches of blood on the floor and walls as well as on the bed. Harold immediately calls the police. When the police arrived, they were able to see that Owen was in really, really bad shape. He was seriously injured. He had been stabbed repeatedly in the chest with a knife and had sustained fractures in his head from severe, powerful blows. He also had severe bruises on his neck, his wrists, his ankles, and his neck had ties around them, and it basically just looked like he was strangled and tortured. Now, Owen's barely conscious at this point, and nobody knows why, but all he says to the police is, I fell against the bathtub. And he said he hadn't been attacked by anyone and slipped into a coma. Police take him straight to the hospital. The other people see that he's been tortured viciously, and he ends up dying, and he gets pronounced dead a couple of hours later. Not even a couple hours later, shortly after arriving at the hospital.
What the fuck, man?
So the doctors at the hospital discovered that the wounds that Owen had gotten were inflicted well before the first bellboy had even gone to his room. And they determined that he had kept attempting to call, but couldn't get further than picking up the phone due to his injuries, and that's why the phone kept going off the hook. So he would pick up the phone to try to call, but couldn't get the words out, didn't have the strength to, and that's why the phone was off the hook so many times.
Wow.
And that's why he kept saying to come in, but couldn't get up to answer the door.
That's intense.
So now there's investigators, they're searching the room, and the strange shit doesn't stop there. They go in, there's no clothes anywhere to be found, not even the clothes that he was wearing in the description of when he checked in, the overcoat, nothing. They can't find anything. The hotel amenities, such as the soap and the toothpaste, missing. Anything that could have been used as a murder weapon, missing. But there was a large amount of blood found on the walls and the bed and the bathroom. There was a label from a tie that was discovered. There were 4 fingerprints on a lampshade which were thought to be that of a woman. 2 water glasses, one of which had a jagged piece taken out, but they couldn't find that piece. And then the other one was perfectly fine and sitting there. There was also an unlit cigarette and a tiny unopened bottle of dilute sulfuric acid, which I looked up and it said it can cause blindness. And if ingested, can cause internal burns, irreversible organ damage, and possibly death. And they also found a hairpin. The room, other than that, was completely empty. The hotel staff determined that he had never even opened the curtains, not once throughout his entire stay. And police came to the conclusion that about 6 hours before he was discovered, that's when he was tortured. So 6 hours before anybody really found him.
So when they were knocking and whoever was responding,
he had already gotten
and when whoever was answering was the one torturing.
Probably whoever hung that do not disturb sign must have locked it behind them and hung that up. So other than this, there's no clues, and police are having a really hard time figuring out what happened. If you can believe this, it gets weirder from here.
And this is 1925.
This is 1935. So there's no surveillance cameras or anything for you to look for. Right. So now they're trying to figure out also, like, you know, what happened here and who is this Don that left the note that he was on the phone with. It was soon discovered, though, that Ronald T. Owen does not exist. There's no record of any such man having lived anywhere in the U.S., but it also appears that a man had been booked at several other hotels, including the Mulback. I don't know if I'm saying that right because it's spelled super weird, but that's the hotel next door that he kept complaining about the price to. And then there's also a booking at the Kansas City Hotel, St. Regis Hotel in the days before the incident, all under different aliases, all that were not his real name, but all matching his description. On one of the occasions, he was seen with another unidentified man. Additionally, there were some other really weird tips. There was a city worker named Robert Lane who claimed that he had been approached by a man mistaking him for a taxi on that night, and that he only had on underwear and a t-shirt, even though it was cold outside, and said, well, if you're not a taxi, where could I get one? He also noted that the man had a bloody wound on his arm, and when asked about it, he just said that he'd get revenge on some unknown party, and then he wandered off into the night.
What the hell?
Then another tip came in from various bartenders said they had seen a man matching Owen's description around the bars in the area with several different women.
So people are witnessing him with both
a man and
then women.
Yep.
Okay.
And in the hotel, they found a label from a tie, but they also found fingerprints they think were a woman.
And the hairpin.
And a hairpin. The neighboring hotel that he kept complaining about, they also came forward claiming that a man matching his description had stayed in the hotel on January 1st. He had checked in under the name Eugene K. Scott. However, upon further investigation, this man also never existed. Now, after the police put his body on display. I don't know why, but I'm assuming that if they did it, they were hoping for an identification.
Right. Or at least some non-alias. Right.
And several people claimed to know who he was. There was a local wrestling promoter who said he had been approached by Owen to participate in matches and that his real name was Cecil Warner. But that didn't lead anywhere. And so they still don't know his real identity. So then they finally start preparing for the funeral, and another potential lead came in because they got an anonymous caller who claimed to be his brother-in-law and telling the police they were on the wrong track and that they were not to bury him in Potter's Field as planned. The mysterious caller even had all of the funeral expenses paid for, sending a wad of cash wrapped in newspaper, but then no other information was found. So it's another dead end.
It was this killer.
Right, that's what I think too. So then over the next couple of months, several people claimed to know who this person is. They're claiming that this is a loved one, but none of the identification stuck. So the case ends up running cold.
But why would people pretend that they knew this scarred-faced, cauliflower-eared human?
Maybe people were hopeful. Maybe they wanted to believe that this was their loved one. But that's a pretty I don't know. I feel
Did the police send out the description of the scars as well, or was it a very general thing?
I would hope that they did, because then you just have a bunch of people hoping that this is their loved one.
Right, because otherwise, like, a scar and a cauliflowered ear are very distinct and very tall and very skinny are very distinctive characteristics of somebody. So you would think that hearing that, you could be like, yeah, that's my cousin or that's my brother or whatever the case may be, if you know someone that matches that description. But if you just hear, like, general vicinity claim to be from LA, that could be anything.
That could be anybody and
in any situation, in any circumstance. So I don't understand, like, why people would claim to know this. Those are very distinct facial characteristics. That's what's weird about this whole case too. Not only is this person unidentified, but people are coming forward to claim to know him. Or did he have a series of aliases? Was these completely mistaken identities?
But it's not like he looked common. If you said, like, dude, average height, brown hair, brown eyes.
Right.
That would be like, all right, that could be my loved one. But I don't know a lot of people.
That could be John Mayer.
Super tall, super skinny, facial scar, cauliflower ears. Might be from Los Angeles. Sounds a little bit more descriptive, but all these crazy people keep coming saying that's my family member, and none of them pan out. So the case runs cold, of course. But then, once they decide to bury the body, because for a while they did try to identify him, during the funeral, nobody turns up. All of these people claiming this was my friend, this is my family, nobody turns up during the funeral.
So weird.
But an anonymous person did send a bouquet of flowers and a donation to cover funeral costs, even though it was already paid for, with a letter that read only, "Love forever, Lucille." That's it. Which could also be the woman that helped. I don't know.
This case is so fucking weird.
So then he finally gets buried at Memorial Park Cemetery, whole thing paid for by anonymous donations, and then this case is just cold with no new leads. But then, in 1936, a woman calls. She calls authorities. She identifies herself as Eleanor Ogletree from Birmingham, Alabama. The mysterious woman claims that she had come across a photo of Owen as she was reading a magazine article about the case. So now we know that the description's out there and people still fucking claim to know him. Like, you have to know that that's not your family member. But she said she saw the picture and that she immediately recognized him as her brother Artemis, who had long ago gone missing. According to her, Artemis disappeared in 1934 and there had been suspicious circumstances about his disappearance. Artemis had apparently sent a series of strange letters to his mother, Ruby Ogletree, even though he had no idea how to type, and all the letters, the tone just sounded completely wrong. And in the final letter, he said that he wanted to see the world and planned to sail to Europe, and that would be the last of it until a strange phone call had come in. The call originated in Memphis, Tennessee, and was from a man calling himself Jordan, who merely said that Artemis had saved his life and had gone on to get married and settled down in Cairo, Egypt.
What?
But an intensive search didn't locate him. So interestingly, like the photos of Artemis were sent to the authorities, and the resemblance was uncanny right down to the facial scar. But the bizarre thing is, if Owen was really Artemis, according to the timeline, the letters and the phone call happened after his death. So was Artemis Ogletree really the mysterious Ronald T. Owen? And if so, how did he wind up in Kansas City, Missouri? Was the mysterious Jordan actually Don, the man who had been heard talking to Owen?
Right.
Had he killed Artemis and then sent those letters and made the phone call to his family after? Why? Who was the woman involved in it all? What part did she play? The promising lead eventually also went cold, and again, investigators were left with nothing. In the years since, there have been other possible leads that have turned up from time to time. Again, this is in 1935. This case goes cold, and they don't really get another lead until 2003.
What the hell? So, wait, I'm terrible at math.
A long freaking time.
Like almost 70 years, something like that?
Almost 70.
Holy balls.
So they get this lead from a Kansas City public librarian. His name was John Horner. And he was contacted by phone by an anonymous caller. So this anonymous caller claimed that a recently deceased loved one, they were going through their stuff. They find a bunch of boxes and they find this one box that contains really odd things. They said within this box was a pile of numerous newspaper articles about the Owen Ogletree case, all meticulously arranged, as well as something mentioned in the newspaper stories, but no clue as to what this something could be. So it was like a tease of a lead, and again, leads to a dead end, because the person never identified themselves, never said what they found, never came forward with it. Which again, like, why would you make that anonymous phone call to give a lead to then not follow through with it? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
This case is crazy. It's all these bizarre questions surrounding the case, and it's kind of almost impossible to know where to start because you don't even know the name of the person who died. So now there's like been various theories throughout the years. One of them that kind of, I guess, makes sense because, again, they found the woman's possible fingerprint. They have Dawn, and then they have a phone call from a man and a woman. So they think that maybe it was the result of a love triangle gone wrong. Something happened, and then this woman and this mysterious Dawn tortured Owen and killed him.
I guess that's could make some kind of sense.
Some kind of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it would kind of tie in some of the details.
Yeah.
But the thing with all of these theories that are going to come up is that there's no one theory that tied in all of the details. This one ties in why there might be a man and a woman and why he might have been tortured, but then why don't we know his name?
Right.
Like, that doesn't explain why he had an alias. Unless he was maybe married and checking in under a different name, but then why did his wife never come forward? Like, that nothing ties in every detail.
Right.
So then there's another theory that maybe this was some sort of psychotic break, but that doesn't really explain much because his psychotic break has what to do with other people torturing and killing him. He couldn't have done it to himself unless, I mean, how would he have done that to himself?
No, I don't know. I mean, I've heard of cases where people have like split personalities where they can make their voices change or their tones change and things like that.
But his fingerprints wouldn't turn into a woman.
Right. And not only that too, I find it strange. If you were being tortured, how come no one heard him? How come nobody heard him, screaming or yelling
it's
for
one
help?
thing. I mean, they heard him arguing. Okay, you might have heard a scuffle. Okay, but to me, if you're getting stabbed repeatedly in the chest,
tortured,
there's screaming, and nobody heard anybody. Nobody saw anybody.
The maid stopped by. A bunch of doormen stopped by.
If there was all of a sudden a do not disturb sign, nobody noticed somebody walking out, maybe, or a man and a woman walking out. So, like, again, this psychotic break thing, it doesn't make sense. It might have explained why he checked in under an alias. Maybe he thought that was his name, but that doesn't explain everything else
That's holding water. That's holding water, for sure.
Another theory, which I found completely, bullshit, is that he was the victim of a hit. Why would he be checking in? I mean, maybe if he was trying to escape someone, he would sign in under an alias. I was thinking
maybe running from the mob or, running
But they're usually pretty open about their shit, and I think they would have admitted to it. I don't think that 70 years later they wouldn't know that this was a mob hit. And who was he? Normally, if it's a hit, it's another mobster or someone's family member or someone they're getting revenge on.
Maybe he owed money to the mob.
Maybe, but it's still kind of weird because none of these scenarios really seem to totally fit all of the details around the case. But in the meantime, there literally have been no other leads, no new insights, and honestly, the only thing that we seem to know is that we don't know anything. There have never been any suspects, no motive, don't know who the guy is, can't positively ID him, nobody ever came forward with something that led to anything, and nothing to really tie together everything. So, the fuck was Ronald Owen? What the hell happened in room 1046? It is now 2019. This happened in 1935, and it doesn't look like we're ever going to know what truly happened.
That's fucking bananas, dude. And there's so many things that could have happened. That's the thing. There's endless possibilities because you don't know who this person is. You don't know who he was with. We don't have a positive identification, let alone anything else that would tie him to anything.
We don't even know where he's from because he said in his checking in that he might have been from Los Angeles. But then he checked in at all these other hotels under other names coming from different cities. You have people from all over. How the hell do you wind up going to Kansas City?
I don't know. No freaking clue. That is a crazy ass story. So thank you for...
It kind of while I was researching, I'm every time that I thought I was done, I was like, what the actual fuck?
Yeah, this is a fucking crazy case. No idea. So it's almost like not a missing person, right, but a unidentified person
it's
and
unidentified, a murder, an unsolved murder. It's a bunch of...
a mystery.
It's a big amalgamation of
great story,
shit.
Dude. Thank you for the reveal.
Yeah, that's the murder in 1046.
I think it's definitely time to move on for our famous segment, Who Does That? Because I'm freaked out a little bit because my brain is still racing with all these possibilities. So I got to get over it because if the cops haven't figured it out, I won't. So let's move on.
Who does that? Who does that? Who does that? Who does that?
Via Pix11.com. Once again, good old state from the South, Florida. Florida woman pulls gator from pants after cops ask if she has, quote, anything else. Punta Gorda, Florida. Wildlife officials are now investigating after a woman pulled an alligator out of her pants during a traffic stop in Florida, according to the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office. The bizarre gator smuggling case came to light after deputies asked the woman, who has not been publicly identified, good for her, lucky her, a standard law enforcement question, quote, do you have anything else? The 25-year-old woman then pulled a foot-long reptile out of the yoga pants she was wearing, according to WBBH. She also has 41 small three-striped turtles in the vehicle, authorities say. The woman was riding with a 22-year-old man who deputies say rode through a stop sign in Punta Gorda leading to the traffic stop. The man allegedly told deputies the pair had been scavenging for frogs and snakes. What the hell are these people doing?
Oh, no.
What are they doing?
You're in a car. Why is the gator in your pants?
It's so fucking weird. I mean, I think it's pretty illegal to steal an alligator. I don't know the rules.
That, if they were concerned about the 21 turtles in the car, I don't... You know what? If you got a gator in your pants and turtles in your car, just don't blow a stop sign. Oh, 41. Okay. Yes. 41 turtles.
Yes. After citing the driver for the moving violation, WBVH reports deputies were making sure they didn't have any protected species where they found alligators and turtles. Florida wildlife conservation officers responded to the scene and continued to investigate. dude. Why are you taking an alligator, first of all? And then, why are you shoving it down your pants? You do realize these things can kill you, correct? At the very least, this thing could eat your legs or your vagina or something.
She put them in her fucking yoga pants, which means you were probably suffocating it, and that shit was gonna bite your badge lips right off.
Oh my God. Yeah, sorry, dudes, but that's the reality of that. You guys... Florida,
please do better.
Please. That's why there's a Florida man coming out on Oxygen.
Oh, yeah. After that Florida man thing that was popular, they're actually making a show out of it. People are going to start making money off of how fucking crazy Florida is.
Yeah, do yourselves a favor. Learn some shame and learn what's appropriate and what isn't. That's all we're asking of you people. That's all.
We're just asking you to not put gators in your pants.
That's it.
That's it. I don't think that's asking for something crazy. Don't put an alligator in your pants.
Don't put an alligator in your pants, and don't check into a seedy hotel and then get tortured and then lie about the fact that you weren't tortured and then die. That's the advice of this episode.
Maybe check in under your real name so that if you do get tortured and murdered,
but
we know how to fucking follow up.
But see, they've learned on planes and hotels to just always take IDs, and I think that's what it boils down to. It's like, you really can't get away with that these
technology.
days.
Now we have surveillance videos and shit.
As bad as it is to have Big Brother, at the same time, it works to our advantage, except for certain dumbasses like putting gators down your pants. Anyway, that is the end of our episode. Please keep checking out our social media accounts. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram.
Subscribe. Leave us a review. Tell us what you're thinking. Go on our
website. We love hearing from you guys.
We actually, we're starting to get suggestions for cases. Keep sending them in. They're really interesting. And most importantly, stay weird, Americas. Bye.